To join us today. My name is Dominic Delicarpini. I serve as Dean of York College's Center for Community Engagement, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. We hope that today's event will help guests from York College as well as the York community to learn about our strategic partnership with Keystones Oral Histories. This partnership is a really good example of the mutual benefit that comes when we engage our students and our faculty in worthy community projects like this one. So I'll begin by introducing President Gunter Smith, who will provide some context for this work within her larger goals for community engagement at York College.
Thank you, Dominic.
Sure.
So good afternoon, everyone. And let me thank all of you for joining us. And in particular, I'd like to thank the other panelists for joining us today as we pretty much embarked on this important project. You know, years ago when we thought of the Center for Community Engagement, and I should say that York College has always been involved in our community, but as we started to expand our emphasis with respect to providing services and programming for the community and also for our students, one of the things that was very important to us as the college was not only to serve the community, but provide opportunities for our students to learn and to learn in a way in which they have a real impact on the area in which we lived, and thereby understand that they are an important part of this community, and in learning about it, that they have an opportunity to really have a major impact. This is one of those programs. We're really excited about it. It will bring together students from a variety of disciplines to participate in developing and videoing these oral histories. And also with respect to what's going on in our country, in York City and York County, I can't think of a more important time for the college, an educational community, to be involved in providing this type of opportunity, not only for our students, but for all students and everyone in York County. In particular, one of our areas of emphasis moving forward is with respect to anti-racism, anti-bias, inclusivity, and equity. And one way in which we need to do that, or we can do that, is to provide a framework for greater understanding of issues that are affecting all of us, and in particular, I would say people of color. It's not just the issues that are affecting us, but it also has to do with highlighting the unique contributions that all of us have provided to our country and to our nation. And I think that this particular program would be very helpful with respect to doing this. It is something that our faculty and our staff and all of us are very much not only in tune with, but find is very important. And it's something that our students actually are really looking for in their education. And so thank you, Mr. Wade, for bringing this important project to us. I'm very proud that we're able to do this, as having in my own family men of color who served in the military throughout the history, if you will. This is very important to understand about how we have contributed as a people to the very formation of our country and continue to do so. So thank you, Mr. Wade, for bringing this to us, and my thanks to the panelists and to Dominic for making sure that we are involved.
Thank you, Dr. Gunter Smith. As Pamela suggested, the college is really committed to partnerships that engage our faculty and students in real-world opportunities and that give them an opportunity to activate their classroom learning. When I first spoke to Brian Wade about this possible partnership, we both realized the many rich opportunities it could provide us. And frankly, we're continuously coming up with new ones. We're kind of dangerous when we get together because the scope keeps expanding and the possibilities keep growing, but it's been a wonderful partnership already, even in the month or so since we reached our agreement. Brian's work comes at a time when the country is moving forward in its work towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, as the president noted. We know that the phrase Black Lives Matter has become a bit of a lightning rod for those who don't understand its goals. But Brian's work literally showcases how and why Black Lives Matter. It shows that they have always mattered, even though historical narratives often fail to recognize that fact. This work, both through the videos that Brian's team is capturing and the curriculum for our schools that Dr. Sherry Washington is developing, will continue the Center for Community Engagement's work of making known the quote unquote hidden figures of York. We've been proud over the past 3 years to bring some of those hidden stories forward through the visit of Soledad O'Brien. It was attended by about 700 college and community members, by a concert by local musician Peter Batros of the Shine Foundation, through the exhibits at the Center for Community Engagement of the artworks of Market View artist in residence Ophelia Chambliss in her show Casting Shadows, and the current exhibit of Richard Craighead and Shelby Elaine, Assemblage, a photographic representation of Black togetherness. And we hope you'll come see these works at the CCE. Many of Ophelia's works are still hanging there as well. CC is attempting to shine a light on the past and the present of a truly diverse community whose full story is yet to be told. For this reason, I can't think of a better project for us to partner with, or a better partner than Mr. Brian Wade, who I'm pleased to introduce for an overview of his goals with the Keystone Oral Histories Project. Brian?
Thank you, Dr. Della Carpini. I appreciate it. Madam President Gunther Smith, to our guest and to our panel, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you regarding Keystones. I want to provide just a brief chronology regarding the history of Keystones. And I'm also proud to be a York College alumnus. So I would like to think that a lot of why I'm doing what I'm doing today has been influenced by my time at York College, Pennsylvania. A little bit about myself. I'm a two-branch military veteran. I served in the United States Navy, and I also served in the Pennsylvania National Guard. I have lived all over the world, expansive travels in terms of my time in the military. Really, I came to York in 1979, so really most of my adult life was here centered in York. I'm a native of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. But once attending York College, and it was really through the urging of Tom Wolfe, who I've known for a long time, who's currently the governor of Pennsylvania. And I'm very appreciative of him and his wife because they subsidized a lot of my college career at York College. So I'm very grateful for their, support of myself and a lot of my initiatives. Also, a lot of the genesis around my time at York College was involved with several of the professors when I created the television series Worlds Apart that examined the legacy of race and racism back in 1997. Dr. Peter Levy, Dr. Gary Bittner, Professor Heinz Hosch, Philip Avillo, Mary Kay Reed, Mr. Mark Schneider. They were all really cornerstones in terms of the initial program that was done that provided I thought, an expansive view about race relations in the United States. And it was really inspired by a Dr. Andrew Hacker, who wrote a book called Two Nations Separate and Unequal, that provides sort of a look, and it's based on the Kerner Commission report of 1968, Patrick Moynihan. It was really what inspired me to create Worlds Apart. Moving forward from that, in 2016, I happened to see a movie called We Were Soldiers, and having served in the military, that was with Mel Gibson, talking about the first major battle in the Ia Drang Valley in the Central Highlands of Vietnam in 1965. From that, at the end of the movie, it listed some of the men that had lost their lives, and one of them was a gentleman named Samuel L. McDonald of Harrisburg. I didn't know it when I saw that. I'm from Harrisburg. I started researching, come to find out he was African-American. And from that, I just thought, I said, really something needs to be done more substantively relative to African-American oral histories, not only just oral histories, but from a regional perspective. And probably within a week or two, I said, well, what about curriculum for schools around something like that? Because in my research, I don't think you'll find in the United States, I could be wrong, anyone doing anything with documentaries with regional history regional curriculum that meets state standards, just from my research. Now, maybe somebody out there is doing that, but I think this provides the collaboration between Keystones and York College to really be trendsetters, or groundbreaking in terms of being the pioneers and leading the way in this type of initiative. So in 2017, in November, so it's really less than a year I had raised the funds. The curriculum was done in October. And then in November of 2017, we honored over 200 or 300 veterans at the Forum Auditorium in Harrisburg. We had the Army band there. Governor Wolf did the video forward for the documentary. And just from there, it's just been a wonderful journey. In 2018, I created the first African-American Military Hall of Fame. It's geared in South Central Pennsylvania. And one of the initial inductees was the late Vonnie Grimes, who's well known in York City and throughout Central Pennsylvania. And a year later, I met with Terry Gendron, who was with the Veterans Affairs for York County. And I told him my work. I showed him my materials. And he said, Brian, I was just going to do a Hall of Fame. But he said, Brian, I want you to see about doing the documentary and the curriculum here in York County. So one thing led to another, and it became a domino effect. I came to York and spoke to Samantha Dorm, who's doing great work out with the Friends of Lebanon Cemetery. She basically sort of laid out a path for me in terms of who to meet. From that, I met Dr. Washington, who I've known. We taught in the same school system together, and I knew her work. And I said, well, Dr. Washington, I'd love to create this documentary, oral history, and also the curriculum, and I would like to bring you on to lead that charge. And she was very elated. And from that, it just kept snowballing. Kevin Jackson introduces me to Dr. Della Carpini. From that, we had a chance to have dialogue. And it's just been a wonderful evolution to see, in some ways, an exponential increase of involvement here in York County. They say be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. Where I've been getting it in spades, believe me. But it's not really, but it's more than about me. It's about being inclusive, relative to the histories of all ethnic groups. My focus has been with the African-American community, and I don't make any apologies. Recently, I've been approached to, as far as now, including the Latino experience. And I've spoken to people in the Latino communities, so they're very excited. So we're just looking to be expansive. I'm really thrilled to involve the students at York College, as they talk about experiential learning, to basically have their hands-on in this process as far as doing the filming, having a part in the development of the curriculum. And I've had wonderful conversations with Dr. DeSantis and other members within the faculty regarding this. So we're just appreciative, and that's enough for now. So I don't want to go over my time limit. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Brian. Would you like to introduce Dr. Washington?
Yes. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sherry Washington. She's a native of York. I've known her for a long time, and I'm very appreciative to have her on board and having her being the anchor for the development of this curriculum. And at this time, I'd like to introduce in the person of Dr. Sherry Washington.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that warm introduction, Brian. And thank you, Dominic, for inviting me to be part of this panel. As Brian said, my name is Dr. Sherry Rowland Washington. I am a native of York. I'm also an alumni of York College, where I received my principal certificate. So it is exciting to be able to work with one of my alumni associations. My background is curriculum and instruction. I am a retired administrator in the public school district, and I also used to work for York Country Day. So developing curriculum is my passion. And as I researched and worked with different school districts in Harrisburg City School District, Stilton High Spire, and when I taught in York City School District, a lot of times in our history curriculum, it's not as inclusive and pieces are omitted. And so when Brian approached me about this idea of this Keystone project, the oral history of the veterans here in York County, African-American veterans, I got excited. And then Brian starts talking about the storyboard, and as he's going over the storyboard, in my mind, I'm going over the curriculum and how is it going to be sequenced.
Right.
So we're excited that this piece is going to be aligned, not just aligned to the documentary, but also aligned to the Pennsylvania Common Core standards, but also integrated with input from students from your college. This curriculum will be able to either be offered as an elective at high schools, or it could be included as a part of the current curriculum, not a supplement, but interwoven throughout the curriculum. We also are looking forward to including an elementary piece, not as extensive as the high school piece, but a piece for the elementary and middle school that will be on their level, but kind of like leading up to the great stuff they're going to get when they are able to take this course as a high school student. Am I missing anything, Brian?
No, I think you've given a good synopsis of what we're looking to do. And I'm very appreciative to have you on board. And I believe that Ms. Colleen Stauffer is also going to be working with you too.
Yes, Ms. Colleen Stauffer, she is an educator at York City School District. She is taking the lead for the elementary and the middle school piece. We are working together. We're excited. And then I definitely cannot leave out the piece that I am so excited for the other two professors from York College to get ready to talk about. We're looking forward to having this be a hands-on curriculum,
yes,
where our students will get to actually engage in inquiry-based learning and hands-on activities. So Brian mentioned my good friend, Samantha Dorm, who's partnering with Tina in leading the Friends of Lebanon Cemetery. And in case you're not familiar, the Lebanon Cemetery was a cemetery in York County, York City, that African Americans were restricted to. That was the only place we could be buried. And there are a lot of historical African Americans who are buried in that cemetery. And so as we complete this curriculum and the documentary, some of the ideals we're considering, when we come to that one piece in the curriculum, we want our students to engage in hands-on activities where perhaps there might be a field trip to the cemetery and they have to work in partners and pairs and research the history of that person and get in contact with the people, with their ancestors who still live in your county or nearby, really helping our young people connect to history so that they can be immersed in the history. And so we're looking forward to working with the students from your college to develop these types of extended activities that will align with the curriculum.
Dr. Washington, I want to say something real briefly. It was just last week when we were at the Historical Society that we found out, and I didn't know this, that St. Patrick's here in York allowed the burial of African Americans in their cemetery. So, that's recent news to me, so that's a part of the digging that we've been doing. There's a gentleman named George Wood who served in World War I. Mm-hmm. From what we're telling, the research is he had an expansive burial and funeral, and several families in the St. Patrick Cemetery are African American. So we're unearthing stuff as we speak. So that might be something as an add-on to the curriculum to look at that aspect that African Americans, at least in York County, were buried in other cemeteries outside of just the Lebanon Cemetery.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you, Dr. Washington, and thank you, Brian. We'll have time for some questions in a little while. Let me remind all of you that if you have questions as you hear people speak or comments, feel free to put that in the chat, and we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some question and answers. I'm going to turn now to my faculty colleagues. I'll tell you, one of the joys about working at your college for the past 24 years is when I go to my faculty colleagues and I say, hey, I've got a lot of work for you. Would you like to do that? And I can't pay you anything for that. They generally say yes. And that is unusual in higher education. I don't know if you know how unusual it is, but they're a terrific group of colleagues. I have three of them with me here today. Dr. Peter Levy, who is a professor of history and is a noted scholar in civil rights issues, including his recent book that some of you, I hope, have read, The Great Uprising, Race Riots in Urban America During the 1960s, and more importantly, Brian's teacher, which is good. And then Dr. Josh DeSantis, who is a professor of education and director of our Masters of Education program, and Dr. Gabe Kuchar-Fellow, who is a professor of writing studies and chair of the Department of Communications and Writing. And Gabe and I went to the same high school about 50 years apart, I think.
14 years apart.
All right. So to begin with, I'm going to ask each of the three panelists, starting with Dr. Levy, to speak about this. In what ways do you think this project can help support the deep learning and the hands-on experiences of our students? And why is it also important for our larger community? So Peter, I'll start with you.
So before I speak to your specific question, Dominic, I just want to say that one of the reasons I responded to this invitation was because Brian's heading it up. I mean, Brian has been one of York College's star graduates for years. I was happy to kind of help him out when he started his shows, Worlds Apart. And I knew about his Keystone project in Harrisburg, and I always kind of regretted not being able to figure out exactly how to help him out there. So when I learned that he was coming to York and going to do this project, I was glad to jump on board. So let me mention, I think, 3 ways. I think this project kind of really dovetails with the mission of the college and helps our students. One, about 3 years ago, we started a public history major. We've always had history students who are interested in working in museums and reaching out to the public, but this became more formalized. So while the focus of the project right now is on working with Dr. Washington to develop a curriculum for school children, there is no doubt that the work Brian's doing can also be embedded in the York History Center, and really in other ways as well, even beyond the center. And I think our students can collaborate with him both on projects, but also that Brian could be a resource for them. Even if they're not working on this project, if he inspires them to do similar local histories and go out and do video documentaries, now I know that, they have someone they can go to and get an idea, what does it take to do this, and what's the best way to do this as well. The contacts he makes are really incredible, but now it also has the skill of how to make those contacts with the community. The second may be a little more long range, but the Keystone Project is collecting an unbelievable amount of information about the African American community and hopefully ultimately even the Latin American community in York. Information that really isn't that widely available. It's new findings. So every year we have seniors who do research papers, and for years I've been prompting them to do a local history. This is a type of material that will live on. I mean, even when, I hate to say it, when I'm gone and Brian's gone, this material will still be there. I mean, the value of doing oral histories is that it becomes part of the permanent historical record, and people can use it over and over again. And the third thing I think is exciting is that this project is inspirational. Maybe Josh will speak to this a little bit, but local history is the way you get people really interested to do history. It becomes, I think, as Sherry said, it becomes your own history. Going to a graveyard and seeing your relatives' names, strange as it may sound, brings history to life. It makes it more real to people. So seeing Brian do this work, I think will inspire others to want to just do more. It will just be like I'm not sure if it's a first course, but it will be like being introduced to a new cuisine. And people will want more of it. So, I see numerous opportunities in the future, in the current period and in the future with Brian's work.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate it. Josh?
Sure. I'm a former history teacher, and one of the things that inspired me about this project was this opportunity to have real curriculum materials that connected the students that we have in our classrooms to this real experience. And that's something that you don't really have a lot of as a social studies teacher. So I was really connected to this project from the beginning and inspired by the idea of being able to tell real stories to my students that matter to them from their perspective. Another aspect of this program that's really compelling is that it features educators at the kind of front and center of the project. So we know that education is on the front lines in our efforts to create a more just and equitable society. YCP occupies an essential position in preparing educators in our region. So in York County and beyond, YCP is an important player in preparing teachers. And we're also, a key player in continuing teachers' education through our graduate programs here. And that's primarily my role here at the college at this time. we're really enthused about this opportunity to learn from and with the community. So we have so much to learn from Brian's engagement with this material, and I really cannot wait to make it available to our students. And we've got room to grow in our understanding and our awareness, lots of room to grow that I think this project can really help us with. I expect our pre-service teachers to assist Mr. Wade and Dr. Washington in preparing some of the curriculum materials. And then I also expect our graduate students in our new diversity and resilience program to assist Dr. Washington in proliferating this curriculum through professional development opportunities for our teachers. So we can really envision in the years to come bringing teachers into campus to learn more about these stories, to be able to bring them back to their schools to implement this curriculum for their students. So lots of potential here, and we could not be more enthused to have this opportunity.
Thank you, Josh. And I'll turn it over to Gabe now.
Similar to what Peter is saying, what Josh is saying. One, I think it's a very inspirational project. I think it's kind of wonderful. There are so many different ways that I think that the mass communication majors, the professional writing majors, can add to this project. And so I know I have some of my colleagues today are in attendance. We have audio production classes that can work with Brian. We have video production classes. We have advanced students in mass communication, who could take on a significant project here. On the writing side, I mean, these are the students that can help you develop finding aids for the archives. These are the students that can work with you to help do usability studies of your archives to make sure that it actually works the way that you hope that it works, and that people are interacting with it in the way that you hope that they're interacting with it. On the research side, I'm not a historian, although my predominant research area is actually archival research. So I do some history of rhetoric of science stuff, but I teach research methods. And so having, I think as Peter was saying, such a large collection of oral histories is, just kind of a wonderful resource for student researchers who are going to be embarking on their own, individual research projects. So I see a lot of opportunities both on the production side, the maintenance of the archive side, and then on the research side for our students. Again, I think it's wonderful and inspiring.
Thank you, Gabe. I appreciate it. I'm going to turn soon to some questions for the panelists. And I've got a few questions in the chat, and I welcome more for anybody that's interested in posting them. Say a couple of quick things in summary. I am so inspired by Dr. Washington's vision of students working out, going to the Lebanon Cemetery and working there. And that dovetails so well with what Josh was saying. I'm imagining prospective elementary school teachers as well as administrators working with the students a generation preceding to be able to show how history matters. As Peter brought up, the idea that seeing history as a process of making stories, not just kind of reading or consuming them or memorizing facts, is so inspiring in terms of that. And then as far as what Gabe was talking about, to give our students these opportunities to learn how to work with professionals in doing filming. In fact, 3 of our students have already signed on and will meet with Brian on Friday to begin their own video projects surrounding this. So we're already off and running with 3 of students, and I want to thank Professor Schiffman, Jeff Schiffman, for getting us these students who are really enthusiastic about starting. And they're going to interview an ancestor of one of the military veterans this Friday, and they will create their own 5-minute videos that will rest alongside the work that Brian's doing. So there are many, many possibilities for this, for podcasts, for other kind of work we can do in collecting oral history. One last thing, and then I'll ask some questions. David Rusk was here a few years ago, and you all know David Rusk's work in New York. And I asked him privately, I just said, David, this is a underrepresented and impoverished school district. Do you know of any school districts that under those conditions that succeed? And he said, there's only 2 that I found, and they are on opposite sides of the country, one in the Midwest, one in Texas. And the only thing I found they had in common was in their curriculum, they studied their own history. because the students became engaged in learning their own history. And that rang with me as well when I started talking to Mr. Wade. It does matter if students see themselves in their own history. It's really important. So with that, I'm going to turn to Peter with a follow-up question. You know, from an historian's perspective, and from somebody who has looked at civil unrest as well as success, how do you think, how does this matter for a community to study its own history?
Well, I mean, history is always going to be more exciting when it doesn't seem like just a bunch of dead people in the past. Or there's, you know, I think the issue of connections and seeing those connections. I also know Brian well enough that what he's doing, he's creating stories that are both inspirational, but probably will also not romanticize and be Pollyannish about the past. So that, you know, you want to inspire, but you also want to, through the military, you can use as a lens to also see the restrictions that here were these African-American heroes who came back. And as was pointed out, you know, most, it appears, were only even allowed to be buried in a certain cemetery. What does that say about our community? So I think it's both. I mean, it's inspirational to have that history uncovered. But at the same time, it allows it to be related to issues of lack thereof equity in our modern times. And so I think, you know, in both ways, it should work.
Great, thank you. Brian, we had a question from Lou Castigato at Fox 43. He was asking if you've completed the first documentary and what you expect the runtime to be at that.
I completed the documentary again in Dauphin County, but the one for York County, I mean, it's like everybody's nipping at my toes. Well, I got this story, I got this story, I got this story. And I'm telling you, know, I said I can't do everything, but I'm looking at, oh boy, hour to hour and 15 minutes. But I know that WITF has reached out to me talking about a more whittled down version, you know, to put their, you know, things in 56 minutes or so. But I'm looking at around hour to 15 minutes. I'm gonna try to make it as concise as I can, but still provide enough content. So that's the range that I'm looking at.
Great. Thank you. And another question, and this one actually is for you, Brian, as well. So, you know, when it comes to building historical curriculum, why did you decide to focus on military veterans?
Well, actually, because one, I'm a military veteran. Again, I was inspired by the movie, and I thought when you look at really a cornerstone in American society has been the military, you know, in terms of all of our involvement around the world. And having been in two branches of the military, I said it'd be great from a regional perspective to share these stories. And believe me, was I on point with that. I tell you, I've come across so many people and they're dying off so quickly, though. I was fortunate in Harrisburg to have met several of the veterans from World War II. And shortly after the documentary, some died after 3 months after doing the documentary, 6 months. And these people, you know, had really outstanding stories, you know, real world stories. So my goal is really to do 13 documentaries that will go from the military to doctors, lawyers, preachers, teachers, the whole African-American experience, also the Latino experience. I know the budget to do that, though, over 7 years is like $1.1 million. We've already sort of whittled out of budget. So I'm hoping that I can raise that kind of money. And also, we want to raise the money to be able to, if the schools will accept it, to get the curriculum at no cost. Because I know COVID has really wreaked the school districts' budgets. So that's something else we're working on trying to do. And we're trying to be very strategic.
Ron, would you like to speak about any of the people that have sponsored your work already?
Oh, sure. The first was the Veterans Affairs Department under Terry Gendron, Powder Mill Foundation, Shipley Energy, I don't want to forget anybody. Oh, AARP, York College of Pennsylvania, Financial End in Kind. It's like I'm really appreciative. It's been enough to, you know, get the ball rolling. Like I said, our budget is quite expansive, but I'm just really happy with the support. So, matter of fact, I meet with the York Community Foundation tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
A question from the college archivist, and this would be, you know, for Brian, but anyone else who can chime in, because I know you all have some information on this.
Sure.
What you wanted to know is how will students access sources? Will it be hands-on only, or are there digital sources you're looking at? And if not digital, will digitizing what you do find be part of this process?
Well, it's going to be an amalgamation of different ways of accessing information. As you well know, Dr. Della Carpini, we were at the Historical Society, so we had individuals that have done a lot of this research specifically around George Wood, who served during World War I. Mr. William Armstrong, who George Wood was his great uncle, they had already put together a nice repository of information regarding this individual. It makes my job a lot easier too, because they had done the research. You know, some of the members at the Historical Society, Mr. Armstrong, Terry Gendron from the Veterans Administration had done research. So it was great to be able to access all of those sources. So I would say there's going to be a lot of ways to access information about veterans.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I'd like to pose this question to Dr. Washington, but also then have others comment on it. So making history was at one point purely text-based. And I know in Gabe's department, they've moved to multimodalities, that education has changed. There are many ways to learn. When we think about curriculum alongside a film project, why does that make sense for these kind of students? And even more so perhaps in the days of remote education. Dr. Washington, do you want to start?
Sure. I think Dr. Levy said it best. It's about connections and really engaging in authentic learning. When a student can read a textbook and having the book in hand or online, and then watch the documentary that aligns to the topics in that textbook, and then engage in the authentic inquiry-based learning, that's what learning is really about. And given our current situation where students are learning remotely, virtually, whatever the term people want to use, our students need to be engaged. And that engagement comes part with having that background of knowledge and connecting to the text. This project is the perfect opportunity to inject some life back in curriculum and learning.
Thank you. Others want to comment on that? Gabe?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm thinking for our students, the students who are gonna be working with Brian, the video students. I mean, these are, authentic, open-ended, unstructured problems to solve, right? Sitting down with an interview participant, making sure the lighting works, making sure the audio works, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they're going to have to troubleshoot, right? As they're actually getting the interview recorded. And then on the back end, then having to make sure that the production of the video works as well. So I think it's both in the consumption of the video and audio, but also the production of it, which can be authentic. And I also think, not to knock textbooks. Textbooks were at one point cutting edge technology. But I think because we have access, and I know Dr. DeSantis does a lot of work with this, but because we have and our students have access to a variety of digital platforms, we should be meeting them with content that exists within those platforms as well. That's what they're used to now. I mean, that is how they live. That is how they experience the world. And I think if we don't keep up in engaging them where they live, it's not going to be as engaging. It's not going to be engaging for them.
Thank you. Josh, do you want to comment on that, or Peter? No, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a challenge under the best of circumstances to reach, and connect with a young person in history. If you'd ask most students, what their least favorite subject was when they leave high school, a lot of them are going to say it was history.
And the rest say writing. So
if you're writing, here we are, right? So the challenge becomes how do you connect and engage and inspire a learner? And sometimes it's about the subject itself, the discipline, which is why I think coming at this from the military history lens is already a high engagement level for lots of folks. That's a lens that you can learn a lot of other aspects of history from. So I think that's a really intelligent way to kind of present this content. And the other way is through the modality. So are you presenting it in a way, as Dr. Washington said, that's relevant? Are you presenting that content in a way that the students are going to be able to kind of connect and engage with it? And I think between Brian's documentary and Dr. Washington's curriculum, I think that it's the perfect connection between those things. And then having this opportunity to lend some expertise, but also glean so much information through York College's partnership is a really profound thing for us. So to answer the question, we're going to connect and engage because of the quality of the materials that this project is going to yield.
Thank you.
If I could add just a brief addendum, add something, please. Another component to what I'm doing, though, is after the release in Dauphin County, like Penn State and other institutions, I actually had panel discussions with some of the actual participants in the documentary. So it became like, okay, I can actually touch and feel them and talk to them. That window, especially for World War II, is closing rapidly. It really is. I don't know if there are any veterans left, even from World War II, African-American veterans in York County now from World War II. I've researched that, and I don't think there are any left. I could be wrong. That Korean window is closing. Vietnam is even closing, to some extent because of Agent Orange and a lot of other things that impacted all the soldiers. So if I can, I will at least try to get primary sources or someone that was close to the individual, but then they could have that engagement with the actual individuals.
Yeah. I know, Peter, you've done a lot of oral history work with your students for that reason, right? To make sure these things get captured.
Yeah, but I also think it's interesting. I go back to the inspiring. So one of my first senior seminar papers, probably about the time that Brian was here, was a woman named Sandra Pruitt, who was interested in women's work in York during World War II. And the only way she could recapture it was by doing oral history. And then Sandra went on to take over an oral history course that York College taught at York College and gave students a chance to interview a relative. And it was amazing how many students wanted to talk about the military experience of their own parents. I mean, it was kind of Josh's point. And not just of men, but also of women, so that we need to kind of capture.
Absolutely.
Even for the women who don't go to war, what's the experience of having a loved one or a son or a daughter or a father who's away? I think that's part of the story, because they're sacrificing, contributing, and that comes out through oral histories. It doesn't always come out in the textbook as much.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll wrap up. I want to be mindful of people's times. This one comes from Ophelia Chambliss, and I have to ask it because she would not be happy with me if I didn't. Would it be possible to draw lines between veterans and cemeteries, create some component of community service to help maintain the cemeteries? That is, to start with the history and then think about ways in which these hands-on community service projects could develop. Any thoughts on that from any of you?
I would say absolutely, to the extent we can be really more strategic in terms of how we maintain and enhance these histories. I think that would be a great approach. And maybe that's something that we can consider at York College, as far as maybe a team of students and, professors or whomever, and making that kind of thing happen. So I would say yes.
Great, thank you. So I think that's a good question to end on for a number of reasons. You can see how many legs that this project can have, so many different ways it can develop, whether it be these three wonderful communication students that Professor Schiffman brought to us to do video projects and learn and hone their editing skills with an opportunity like this, whether it's doing archival historical research to unearth some of these things, to build curriculum and at the same time build teachers that will go out into this, the service world as teachers and administrators with a better understanding of diversity. All these things make your college graduates people that others want to hire. Really is at the heart of our mission, is because our students leave your college not only with classroom education, but they leave your college with experiences, with a resume, and we really appreciate, Brian, you're giving these, and Dr. Washington as well, giving these students the experience that will set them apart as they go out and look for their jobs. I also appreciate, in all seriousness, that my colleagues' work. You brought so much to this. There are several other faculty colleagues who also have jumped in to do this work. And again, it's such a joy to work in a place like York where people do dive into these great experiences.
Dr.
So,
Della Carpini,
yes.
I just want to thank you because you've really set the tables in so many ways. I'm telling you, I couldn't have envisioned this happening the way it did, but man, O'Day, you have been such a wonderful and ardent, advocate of this whole process. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's I know a good idea when I see it, Brian, and I know good partners when I see them. So thank you. Brian, any last words before we close?
No, I'm really grateful and appreciative, and it's nice to be able to, come back home because I left the area and came back, within the last 3 or 4 years, and to now come back to my alma mater and to see how this is maturating, and also now that there are other schools that are interested in coming on board. Penn State, I just got a call yesterday. I know Gettysburg College is not in York County, but there could be some early conversations around that. They haven't reached out to them yet, but they know several of the trustees. So I don't know, your college is going to be right in the thick of it, I tell you, as far as being the hub for all of this. So I'm really happy and looking forward to the journey.
Great. Well, let me close then by thanking all the panelists, by thanking Dr. Gunter Smith for listening once again to one of the crazy ideas I bring her regularly. She is mindful of the fact that I need to be hemmed in sometimes. I appreciate her getting on board on this one. This one was easy because of all the wonderful things you're bringing, Brian. Thank you. And thanks to all of you. We look forward to further ideas. Please, those of you who are faculty members, come to us. We'd love to hear more ideas about how this can really develop into community-based learning projects. So with that, thank you for attending, and we'll close our session today. Have a great rest of the day,
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you so much. Nice meeting you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.